It's obvious that you listen to this show to hear about and support other people's dreams. But what about yours? What is your dream project? I'm here to help you break through whatever is in the way of your dreams and get you to the finish line. Go to dreamingbigcoaching.com today and take the first step. Literally, it's a button you can click to sign up for a free consultation with me. Let's find out if I can help you reach your goal. Click on Take the First Step. It's that simple to start the rest of your life. Get coached by Rob Southgate at dreamingbigcoaching.com. Look, we're all nerds here. Todd Stashwick's Nerd Circus is a great place to pick up nerdy paraphernalia and groovy wares. How about some sweet lava lamp dice? Or maybe a funky 70s Rec Room Nerd Circus dice box? Does that do anything for you? Need a drink? What about the book Mystic Libations? Critical cocktails for the thirsty adventurer. Look, Todd Stashwick's Nerd Circus is the place for nerdy threads, cool tabletop gifts, and more. Go to thenerdcircus.com and check out the cool stuff. Oh yeah, and let them know the TTRPG Insider sent you. Welcome back once again to TTRPG Insider. I am your host, Rob Southgate. The TTRPG Insider is a podcast about tabletop role-playing games. More specifically, it's about the amazing people that create these games. Every episode, I am interviewing someone who is involved in the making of the games, behind the scenes. I want to hear their stories about their lives, about being game makers and creators, not just a description of their game. You can follow TTRPG Insider on Facebook by searching for TTRPG Insider. I plan to add more social media, but for now, that is still the best place. If you want to email me, you can send an email directly to rob@ttrpginsider.com. Do me a favor. If you're enjoying this show, please rate and review it. Those reviews are how Apple Podcasts knows that people are interested in and will start exposing the show to more people. It really helps me out, and it helps out the guests that are on this show as well. This month, we're featuring the Black Ballad by the Storytellers Forge. They have a backer kit campaign that launched on March 7th and is going to run for 30 days. Please support this crowdfunding effort, both financially and by sharing it across your social media. You never know who's going to absolutely fall in love with this game. Go to BackerKit and search for the Black Ballad, or, even easier, simply click on the link in our show notes. Today's guests are Grady, Wang and Theo Thourson. They are both writers on the Black Ballad and hosts of the fantastic YouTube show, The Gallant Goblin. Let's welcome Grady and Theo to the show. Grady, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to talk to you. You're a writer, not only on the Black Ballad, but you have your own YouTube show, and I'm sure various other projects in various stages of development. So why don't we start by you just introducing yourself? And I know your partner has COVID, so so they may or may not be joining us. If you want to talk about them a little bit, or you want to let them talk about themselves at some point, tell people about yourself, Grady.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on your show, Rob. My name is Grady Wang. I'm the co-founder of The Gallant Goblin, along with my partner, Theo Thourson, who may or may not make an appearance. We started as a YouTube channel. We actually kind of started only in TTRPGs and D&D about 6 years ago in 2017, playing with 5th edition. And Theo is our game master, and he was looking to get some minis. And we found that a lot of the most popular minis for games are available in these kind of blind booster boxes, so they're kind of randomized. And it was very hard to find what exact minis we needed for each encounter and things like that. And there was a good site, minisgallery.com, out there that had some references, but we kind of wanted everyone to kind of be able to get a really good look at each of these minis. And so we started kind of collecting, because we're kind of big on collecting things.
Okay.
And we just started filming our collections, putting them on round tables, doing close-up HD videos of each one so people could kind of see.
Oh, cool.
One, kind of do a short narration with each one to kind of discuss, like, this is the creature, this is where they show up, these are the adventures that use them, and here's some story hook ideas that you can do if you get one of these, but you don't know what to do with them. Or, vice versa. If you're running something and you're looking for this mini, here's how you can get it and things like that. And that kind of took off. And so that's where we started from. And now we do a lot of reviews for all sorts of TTRPG content. And then I've always been a bit of or wanted to be a professional writer.
Okay.
But wrote as a hobby. And then so started doing some TTRPG supplements, like on dmsguild.com, which is the community content site for Dungeons and Dragons. And then we started going to some cons and things like that, met Satine Phoenix, which eventually became part of Apotheosis Studios, which published
the Red Opera.
Red Opera.
Yes.
And then
we're starting to see the lines here, how you end up with Rick, how you end up with all these guys. Sure.
Yeah. And so that's how, when they started Sirens Battle of the Bards, Rick kind of moved from Red Opera to that. And we got brought in as well as writers. We were able to recommend some writers, join that team. Had a great experience working with Rick. And so when Rick decided to went off to do Storytelling Forge, which is his new endeavor, his goal being to very much bring kind of a different style of publishing to TTRPGs. We were very excited about that, to kind of help him kick off the Black Ballad, this first project. And the goal is to fund not only the Black Ballad, which is this going to be an amazing, like, level 1 to 20 5e adventure, very epic, very kind of like heavy metal rock opera kind of inspired storyline about death and reincarnation, and what does it mean for what does death actually mean in a world where you could be resurrected at any moment. But that project will also hopefully kick off Rick's Storytelling Forge company, right, which is designed to kind of really bring a lot of power to the writers in an industry where a lot of the power is centralized with the publishers. And it can be very difficult for freelance writers to really make a living doing this. A lot of folks really can only do this as a side gig. But Storytellers Forge is partnering with like a publisher in the traditional novel and fiction space, allowing us to kind of publish our own content along with it, sell our own kind of wholesale copies at conventions, and kind of really be able to take the writing that we contributed and make it part of our own career. Yeah, sure.
It's funny when you were talking about this, and I've interviewed a bunch of people from this project, and I know it pretty well, pretty inside and out. Something occurred to me. This is very much what Rick and Pat, what they're building here with Storytellers Forge, reminds me of what happened in the 90s with indie film, because writers and indie filmmakers, it was like, I remember being an actor at that point. If you got paid a piece of pizza, man, that was like a banner day. Like, wow, we actually ate something. The writers, like, they weren't even getting the respect. Like, yeah, we're not even going to invite you on set. You know what I mean? And here it sounds like Rick and they have a vision here with this company to break that. And it just reminds me of that energy, which I was a big part of, and I was really into. I was part of a thing called the Ice Pack, and we were trying to like change it. And you know what? It worked in a lot of ways. So this is super cool, Grady. This is super cool. So a writer, you always wanted to be a writer. When you were younger, did you do a lot of creative writing, or were you trying to write? You said TTRPG is newer for you. Were you writing what were you writing? My dad was a big sci-fi and fantasy reader, so I kind of grew up with this huge library of books that was available for me to kind of.
Someone was detected at your Ring doorbell.
Sorry about that.
It's your dad. You're talking about him.
Just kind of as my reading level grew, I could kind of dive into all of these books and these worlds, and the idea of kind of being able to not just tell a story but create this entire setting with original ideas and characters and people has always just really appealed to me. So I kind of started writing short stories and little novels kind of inspired by my favorite sci-fi and fantasy novels. And then eventually kind of also wanted to do some filmmaking. So my parents were supportive of that. I managed to make student films in high school and things like that. But never really touched tabletop until more recently.
Yeah. Once again, it's reminding me of that indie film scene. It's also reminding me way back when we did our first zine, and it was like comic books were kind of treated the way TTRPG is right now, where that people were starting to catch on, like, hey, we can actually do something super creative in this medium, and that was way back. I'm old, all my memories, nice and old. Okay, I'm going to ask this question because you cracked it open. Who are your favorite sci-fi authors? It's like a million, right?
There are a lot.
Yeah. Who's a touchstone for you?
So I think my touchstone is actually David Brin.
Ooh.
So, which is a little bit older. I know he's still publishing things, but not quite at the pace as in the 90s. But he's best known for there's The Postman, which was not a very well received film.
No, but the book is fabulous.
The book is amazing. It's just this incredible cathartic journey, and then of course the Uplift series as well, which I feel like kind of set off a lot of that kind of galactic world building, kind of space politics, very like in a way that I guess I don't know. I hadn't seen in sci-fi at that time. I know like fantasy has always been, the books have like entire glossaries at the end.
Right. Massive glossaries. Yeah. Like Tolkien, you can get a whole book of just that background information before you're into any story at all. Yeah. I get that. Yeah. Brin's a great one. For me, I'm a big sci-fi fantasy reader. Sci-fi really is my thing. I love the short story guys, Philip Dick, Theodore Sturgeon, Harlan Ellison, which they're all older, but come on, nobody writes it better than those guys, and actually for Brin, that's kind of a precursor to The Expanse. The Expanse is so popular now.
Yes.
And that is this world building that's way beyond world building. We're talking galaxy building, and nobody was doing that before. So I love that. I love that you called out Brin on that one. Very, very nice, Grady. So, okay, when you're writing, obviously Black Ballad is set in more of a fantasy setting. Have you had an opportunity to write any sci-fi TTRPG?
Not yet. We've kind of gotten very big into kind of the content that Paizo puts out, which is Pathfinder and Starfinder.
Sure.
And so Starfinder is a mix. It definitely draws visually and mechanically heavily from sci-fi content, but it's also directly a continuation of Pathfinder. So you get
right. So it's still got that element to it.
Fantasy and magic races, but put in this future, which I think is super cool. And then of course there is also like, Spelljammer in that kind of setting, but I really feel like that is just more solidly fantasy. It doesn't even really aim to get into the sci-fi territory. But yeah, that's something that we would love to see or love to do at some point. In our experience, sci-fi does not do as well in the tabletop space as fantasy.
Sure.
And it's hard to tell if it's just the audience isn't there or it's a little harder to like, I don't think it's necessarily hard to sell, right? But because like sci-fi does well in like other parts of popular culture.
Right. In movies, sci-fi trumps fantasy typically.
Right. But at least until recently with like Game of Thrones.
Until recently, yeah. Now they're pretty evenly matched. I mean, you put out there'll be a big sci-fi movie, and then boom, there's a big fantasy movie, and everybody's on board for both of them. Mm-hmm. So I understand that though. Like, it seems like if it doesn't say Star Wars on it for tabletop, those rooms when you go to a con are not very full. Whereas fantasy, they're packed.
Yeah, and I think
although Warhammer has been super popular, which does kind of play fantasy, but it is a sci-fi story.
Yeah, and I've heard good things about the Alien RPG too. I don't know necessarily how popular it is at cons and things, but it's certainly kind of a unique system as well. And this very it has that cinematic mode that's very driven, like storytelling, finish it in one session. And I think that's something that's kind of popular these days as well, to be easy to consume.
Yeah, that's one I'm definitely interested in playing myself. The other one is the Blade Runner RPG that's coming or out. Once again, it's Philip K. Dick
Yeah.
inspired. So have you ever tried Tales from the Loop? I hear that one's really interesting as well.
I've not had a chance yet, but it's definitely something we want to get into, especially after all the OGL stuff recently. We're really trying to branch out more into different game systems.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd actually be remiss if I didn't mention Vast Grim as well, which it comes from Infinite Black, and it's a Mork Borge hack. Like, so it's compatible. It uses that rule system, but it's set in it's a sci-fi setting.
Cool.
And it's like this apocalyptic universe because that's what that kind of game system supports. But that's been very cool, and we actually did get an opportunity to write one adventure for that.
Fun
on my sci-fi background for.
I love it. So with Black Ballad, I'm sure you've written elements of it. Is there any like favorite part you've written?
So we're focused on very much the supporting world building documents right now, and the packet that was needed for the Kickstarter, of course, so that people can get a sense of it. So the adventure itself there's not been a lot of work done on that yet. It has been outlined, but it's not. And that's the part that I'm looking forward to a lot. But I was able to contribute some kind of the in-world letters. So each major division of the book is going to start with kind of one short, like 700-word letter written by one character in the setting that kind of tells a little bit of its own short story and gives you a sense of what to expect from that particular section. And so that's been really cool. And so I just like diving into the motivations of each of the NPCs, because and that's kind of this divide for TTRPGs, right? The player characters are supposed to be the main characters of the story, but you don't know who those player characters are going to be.
Right.
And so you're trying to create these very fascinating and fun and important NPCs who can help move along the story and have their own motivations, and are people that hopefully the players will want to learn more about without stealing the spotlight from them.
Sure. So, Grady, your YouTube channel, you said you're into miniatures. Do you paint miniatures, or are you really more of I buy them finished and we use them for gaming?
So we focus primarily on the pre-painted miniatures, and we're about to get some guest stars.
Hey!
How are you? I'm sorry. Am I interrupting?
No, not at all. In fact, I was going to ask, how are you doing, Theo?
I'm okay. My head hasn't equalized from the flight yesterday, so I can't hear out of this ear. But otherwise, I'm doing okay. Just feels like a cold.
Oh, that's good. So, Theo, I'm going to focus on you for a minute. We've talked about Grady quite a bit. What's your background? How did you end up in the TTRPG stuff?
Wow. Okay. So, my background is basically school psychology. I was working in the school.
I love that.
Diagnosing kiddos with autism, ADHD, learning disabilities, and things like that. And then we had, I guess, gaming as a hobby, board games primarily during the 2010s. And we sort of, we went to some cons. We watched Acquisitions Incorporated, and we watched Harmon Quest from Mark Harmon. Mark Harmon? That's his name,
Dan
right?
Harmon.
Dan Harmon.
Community.
Community.
Yeah.
It was kind of introduced me a little bit more to the D&D world. I had played D&D once a long time ago when a friend brought it over, but it was before the days of actual plays. And so there was really no way, there's no model of how to play.
Yeah, you're kind of guessing and hoping you're playing it right?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing exactly. And he was doing his best. My DM was doing a great job, but I didn't know what it looked like, so we did our best.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until we were actually able to watch people play it properly that we were able to kind of jump in and enjoy it. I didn't have an older sibling or anybody to introduce it to me when I was a kid, which I think is how a lot of us get into these games, is from siblings or neighbors who bring us in when we were kids. So
I went to Thanksgiving and my cousins were all playing it, and they were my older cousins. So I'm like, what is this coolness? Yeah, that's what introduced me. I think I was 10, somewhere in there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I just wasn't lucky enough to have that when I was a kiddo. So we didn't really get into it until like 2017, 2016, 2017. Yeah, and then kind of I got into it from there, transitioned over from board games into TTRPGs, never really looked back.
I get it. Now, you're also a writer on this. I know you guys are writing partners. I'm going to ask you the big question I asked Grady. What inspired you? What authors inspire you?
Writing adventures is really it feels like a huge challenge compared to just writing stories or writing anything along those lines. Because the way I was telling Grady recently is that welcome to a regular author and tell them, I want you to write a grand adventure, but you don't know who the main characters are going to be.
It's what we were just talking about.
Yeah. Because that's really the challenge here. Because you are not writing the main characters. The main characters can be provided by somebody else, but you have to make sure that the story can fit with more or less any kind of hero, but still hopefully suggest themes and plots that can dovetail into good story arcs. And I guess, wow, like writers who inspire me. I mean, in the TTRPG world, I really like stuff that Justice Armand does.
Okay, cool.
Like a lot of his have been really good for me, and I like James Hake. Yeah, James Hake.
James Hake. Okay, great.
The great ones out there, and then as one that I really look to more recently is the one who wrote that 10-book saga that I was reading recently. Oh, Joe Abercrombie.
What's the saga? What's that one?
It's called the First Law series.
Okay,
a series of 10 books. That is a trilogy. It's it's a fantasy trilogy. And then that leads into 3 standalone novels.
Sure.
And
as they all do, right?
Yep. Well, this was unique. Yeah, it's a series. It's a trilogy, and then it leads to 3 standalone novels that kind of continue the story with different characters and different settings. And then a sequel trilogy, and then finally a book of short stories that kind of fills in some of the gaps. But it was this
wonderful,
amazing series. I devoured all of them, and the audiobooks are amazing because the narrator is just the best narrator I've ever heard. But his way of world building and creating compelling characters and stories that aren't predictable but are also, thematic and fulfilling. He's now probably my favorite author. I've read almost everything he's read at this point.
Wow, so fantastic!
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'll put links to this stuff in the show notes too. Makes it easy for people to find them and check these things out. Because I know I hear stuff on these shows and people mention like this amazing book, and you go past, you go like, yeah, I'll remember that, and you don't remember anything other than maybe there was something you were supposed to remember. So I will put this in the show notes. I promise the listener, and they'll know where they got it from. So, okay, so Black Ballad, we've got a backer kit that's launching March 7th. And we're going to talk more about that on Go Fund This when I have some people on that. But for the listener, I'm going to put a link here in the show notes. You can click on it. You can sign up for the email list so you get notified when it goes live. So you want to do that. You want to share it with people because let's face it, you are one person, but you might have 1,000 people following you, and there's going to be a handful in there at least that's going to go, oh, cool. This is super cool. I love that you guys are part of Storytellers Forge and this new concept that they're putting together. I think it's just wonderful. I think that we are seeing a dawn of writers getting a little more respect in this industry when really isn't TTRPG really mostly about, don't let the artists hear that, mostly about the writers? Don't tell the artists.
And I mean, I think it's interesting that the approach that Black Ballad is taking to TTRPG design as well, because what's happening is for each of the adventure chapters, they're encouraging the writers to write without necessarily working on the mechanics. So we're splitting off like the stat blocks and the text of like, do this DC something athletics check, and then if you succeed, this happens, and this very like rigid, keywords and rules that have to be written in a certain way to be run at the table.
Right.
And the focus of this is to be able to bring in folks who have different storytelling experiences. Maybe you are a novel writer, or maybe you tell stories through podcasts or film, but you have these ideas, and so you can tell the story that you think needs to be told within this chapter and the possible outcomes and obviously the choices that the players may make. But then they're bringing in folks from 2C Gaming, which is very well known for their mechanics, very solid, like all the way to level 20, post level 20 epic gaming, all of that. And they're going to then look at what the writer intended for this story, and then work with them to then develop gameplay that will support the story. But it's kind of another way of dealing this, to let different people focus on what their strengths are and maybe bring in some more diverse viewpoints and tell a type of story that maybe a traditional TTRPG designer might not think of.
I love it. I love it. That's why we're featuring Storytellers Forge and Black Ballad this month as our premiere month, because I love everything you're saying here. And I hope that the listener feels the same way and wants to really support this. So Grady, and I know we've lost Theo for the moment, but Theo, thank you guys so much for being on. One more shout out. What's the YouTube channel?
Our YouTube channel is The Gallant Goblin. So TheGallant Goblin. And so you can just do youtube.com/The Gallant Goblin or gallantgoblin.com. We have a website that'll link to all of our various socials and things like that as well.
Yeah, and I'll put all that in the show notes too. I want people to watch your stuff. I'm actually, when I finish up with you, I'm going to go check it out. My dad was a military miniature painter, and he made his own figures in that. So looking at those figures is always something I love doing. So I'm excited to check out your reviews and to see what's out there. Sounds super cool to me. So once again, Grady and Theo, thank you guys for being on. This was wonderful, and great luck with this. Let's hope Storytellers Forge is a huge success, and this is the catalyst that made it happen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Rob.
Thank you again, Grady and Theo, for coming on the TTRPG Insider. I encourage everybody listening to go to YouTube and subscribe to The Gallant Goblin. You will love it. Like I said before, the link is in the show notes. If you or anyone you know has a crowdfunding effort about to launch or currently going, send them our way. We love to share cool TTRPG projects and to help people reach their goals. You can connect with me through the TTRPG Insider Facebook page or via email directly to rob@ttrpginsider.com. You can find the link to the backer kit for the Black Ballad and any other links we discussed in the show notes. Once again, please rate and review this show. It helps me, it helps the guests, and it helps other fans out there that would be interested in hearing the topics that we're talking about. TTRPG Insider is a production of Southgate Media Group, hosted, edited, and produced by me, Rob Southgate. Thanks so much for listening to the TTRPG Insider.